Hey everybody. So we have a really disturbing thing happening in this country right now. We got this weird rise of communism happening. Well, okay, socialism. Yeah, communism. It's fucking communism. They call it socialism. It's communism. Uh, and now they're just straight up saying the quiet part out loud. They've declared themselves Democratic Socialist of America. We have a small splinter group within the Democrat Party now, which sucks because, I am a lifelong Democrat, the son of Democrats who were also raised by Democrats. So it's terrible to see, that the communists are coming back. The Red Menace has returned. uh, and it happened in my party. But whatever, I digress. We've seen this once before with the Republican Party. They had the rise of the Tea Party, which is not communist. They're actually like the opposite of communists. They were just, angry Republicans who wanted the United States to get back to a vision closer to what the founding fathers had in mind, which, some self-righteous cunts will try to tell you was, like a racist or sexist version of America, but they're not racist or sexist people. They want small, controlled government instead of, totalitarian government that can literally prosecute you for saying words on the internet or even at a park. Which is, I don't know. That whole situation is, ugh. Either way, the Tea Party, they for starters, they called themselves the Tea Party. And they also represent themselves. They chose the Gadsden flag to represent them. That's the "Don't Tread on Me," the yellow one with the snack on it flag. Because, so much of their ideas are founded in American history. I don't believe that's going to be the same route that the Democratic Socialist of America take. I'm fairly certain they are not going to go with symbols of a country they seem to hate. So, but whenever I see their little rallies and stuff like that, I see an awful lot of Iranian flags. That's kind of weird. Although, I've also seen people say online that, the flag that they're going to eventually adopt is probably going to be the Hezbollah flag, which is a joke. Probably. Hopefully. I'm certainly rethinking this whole Democrat thing. Not sure if I even can call myself a Democrat. Which, they already took the word liberal from me. I was a liberal for a long time until about the mid-2010s. I had to stop calling myself a liberal because liberals went nuts. And then they became leftist. So some people were able to keep the word liberal because there was still a distinction between a liberal and a leftist. But I don't know. If they're taking over the Democrat Party, the next time I register to vote, I'm probably going to have to register as an independent. And I guess my vote is in play, like Bill Maher was saying. What can you do? Anyway, I have a theory. Like, lots of people have theories about what caused this rise in, communism to happen and how we're supposed to fix it. And honestly, what's nice about my theory is it actually comes with a solution baked in. Okay? So, there are a lot of people who want us to return to the McCarthy era of dealing with communists. Of just, black bag the motherfuckers. I'm not fully against that idea, but I would like to try a more measured approach. Maybe a bit of a lighter touch. Because here's what the problem is. These kids are communist rather than excuse me. These kids are communist rather than capitalist because we're not really showing them how good capitalism can be. Which tends to be, a pretty big problem. If you're trying to sell something, you kind of need to show why this is good, why you should want this. And we're not doing a very good job at that. We're actually doing a really shitty job at that. Because what these kids who are turning into communists are seeing is poverty. They're seeing no future. They're seeing never owning a home. They're seeing, their generation, Gen Z, their generation unable to get and keep jobs. Hell, even I'm on disability because of my inability to retain employment. Of course, for me, I have this schizophrenia, so played a factor. But, a lot of these kids, they don't really, there's nothing really wrong with them. Just nobody wants to hire them. And when they do get hired, the cost of everything is incredibly high, and the wages are incredibly low. So, what reason do they have to be hopeful? It's like capitalism is failing this generation. It's failing this generation, and it's easy to just blame the generation, but what are we going to do when the next generation is also blaming capitalism? And then the generation after them is also blaming capital. See, are we just going to blame every generation from this point going forward? No, that's fucking stupid. We can't do that. We have to fix what the actual problem is. And the actual problem is we allowed capitalism to get too big. It's the same situation that you see the Tea Party talk about. Government got too big. Capitalism also got too big. Because, bear with me on this, okay? Anytime you talk to somebody about raising minimum wage so that people can live, the first thing they bring up is, okay, then the prices of everything goes up. And they're not wrong. The prices of everything will absolutely go up. Because that is what unchecked capitalism leads to. Unchecked capitalism leads to hyperinflation. So what do we need to do? We need to wrangle capitalism. We need to throw a lasso on it. Drag it to the ground. Hog tie it. Maybe give it a couple good hard kicks. Humble it a little. Set it down in a chair. And then very carefully explain to it, hey, motherfucker, you were supposed to be serving the people. What you doing, buddy? The people can't afford to live. Which means, basically we would have to raise minimum wage, but also prevent the corporations from raising their prices, because we all know what the corporations are going to do. The corporations, if you tell them they have to pay everybody $1 more, they will. They'll pay everybody $1 more, and then they'll raise the price of everything by $2 more. because they are greedy motherfuckers. That's what the problem is. They're horrifically greedy. Look, these companies can exist within smaller margins. They can absolutely exist within smaller margins. They just don't wanna. They don't want to exist within smaller margins. They want their CEOs to be billionaires. And they want their middle management to be millionaires. And they want everyone who's below middle management to be a fucking slave. Because they don't give a fuck about anybody who's below middle management. And, it turns out you can't run an economy like that. It turns out that doesn't work. It turns out whenever you have employees who sit down and do the math and realize, actually, when I do the math, when I factor in the cost of everything, including but not limited to the gas and the car insurance that it takes for me to get to and from my job, I can't afford to live. Well, what are those people going to do? They're going to stop showing up to the job. They can't afford to keep working. So therein kind of lies the problem whenever you have these groomers. And we know that the groomers exist. The debate about whether or not the grooming teachers exist, that's a done deal. That one's over. I know, again, some snarky little leftist punk will try to argue that the debate's not over, but you can go onto TikTok, you can literally see the videos of teachers bragging about the grooming that they do. These women, they're about the same weight as me, but a good 6 to 8 inches shorter. They got the nose rings and the blue hair, and, they dress like Miss Frizzle. And they think it's quirky. Because, being quirky now is dressing identical to everyone around you. But, so we know that the grooming is happening. You can go onto TikTok and you can find evidence of the grooming happening. So what we need to do is we need to come up with a plan to combat the grooming. Because the grooming is going to keep happening. They're not going to stop trying to groom these kids. This is how communism works. This is how other things work that I could also get into, but I don't want to make this that kind of video. So let's stick with capitalism versus communism for today. So the grooming is happening. And herein lies the problem. Because if you try to groom somebody and they know they have no future, okay? We'll do a thought experiment, all right? You're a kid, all right? So, do whatever you got to do to get into character. Put on a little ball cap, suck on a lollipop, whatever you got to do to get yourself into character that you are now a kid, okay? We'll say you're late teens, early 20s. You're about to graduate high school, go off to college, Or maybe you're in college. Either way, you were about or currently getting your ass kicked by the real world. You're now officially, you're paying rent. You're paying bills. Mommy and daddy, you're not living with them anymore. Okay? You were getting clobbered by reality. And now you have some shitlord communist groomer talking to you about how great everything's going to be whenever the office of the president is gone, whenever, the House of Representatives and the Senate have been, merged into one, whenever, the Supreme Court is gone, how somehow it's going to be the utopian dream in this country with no political corruption once we get rid of 2 of the 3 branches that help with the checks and the balances to prevent the political corruption. It doesn't feel very well fucking thought out, does it, when you say it out loud? Huh. Well, but clearly the world will definitely be better once, they abolish ICE, because we're not going to need ICE anymore, because there's not going to be any more borders. So anyone who wants to do us harm will be able to just come in and do whatever they want. See, that still doesn't sound very smart, but maybe it'll make more sense once prisons are also abolished and the police are also defunded and abolished. So that way anyone who wants to come into your home, murder you, rape your wife, and take what they want will also, this still just sounds really fucking dumb, doesn't it? Boy. But herein lies the problem. You have these teachers, they're very good at speaking. They're very well spoken, very articulate types, So they're talking to these kids, lying to them about how bright and sunny and happy the future will be once the country becomes communist. They're, selling them on the bullshit. They're selling them the bullshit. They are quoting Karl Marx and John Lennon at them, not the singer, but, the famous communist. Either way, they're quoting these people at them, and they sound very smart, like how a high school kid who discovers his first Nietzsche sounds smart when he quotes Nietzsche. They have that kind of fake intelligence to them. It's not really like a worldly wisdom. It's just I can repeat things smarter people said intelligence. So they're smart. Just like a parrot. They're parrot smart. But unfortunately, for the kid who's being exposed to this propaganda, all of his life experience is summed up in being poor. His parents had no money. He now also has no money. When he asks his parents for financial help, his parents tell him, "Bud, we would help you, but we're struggling too." Everything's so expensive, and the jobs are paying so little. If you can even get hired, the jobs are paying so little. Because of hyperinflation, because of capitalism run amok, because capitalism unchecked, because nobody who's running the show right now wants to give capitalism the good hard backhand that it needs. So to this kid, let's put a thought experiment inside of a thought experiment, I guess, because what's more fun than a hat on a hat, right? You're tied to a chair and somebody's tightening thumb screws on your thumbs. Everything's going to sound good to you whenever they say, hey, we can take these thumb screws off your thumbs, but we're going to put them on your toes. Even that's going to sound like a relief. It'll at least be a relief for your thumbs. So, even bad ideas sound like good ideas when you're desperate. So, of course, these kids are being brainwashed by these groomers. Of course they are. Because capitalism is failing them. They don't have the same context that the older generations have. They weren't there to see the fall of the Berlin Wall. They weren't there to see the contrast of how East Berlin was living compared to West Berlin. So now let's do that thought experiment again. Now you have somebody, they're trying to sell you communism, but you're happy. You have a part-time job. You're making okay money. You're able to swing your car payment. You're able to, pay your rent. And you're even able to afford not just afford groceries, but also even able to afford to go out and have some fun, buy a video game, go bowling, hang out with your friends. So now you got somebody approaching you trying to sell you these terrible ideas, but you're happy. Well, those terrible ideas aren't going to sound like such good ideas when you're not desperate anymore, are they? And there it is. There it is. You want to know why the kids are becoming communist? Or, excuse me, socialist? The reason why it's happening is because they literally have no other foreseeable future on the path that we're on right now. We need to fix what's happening in this country today if we want to prevent these kids from destroying the country in an attempt to find a better way. We have to show them that capitalism absolutely works and that this country was able to be successful for 200 years, over 200 years off of capitalism. Or we can let the socialist have it, or excuse me, the socialist have it. Anyway, till next time, you're you, I'm me. Keep it brutal.